I have no idea what is happening with the Canadian justice system. It seems like it's going through a dark phase. It's like a transformation into the most evil you can imagine. And I don't know why. I don't really kind of want to know why it's going down this path, but we're seeing it, we're witnessing it, and things are only going to get worse in this country because we don't have proper jurisdiction. We don't have proper measures to tackle the most heinous of crimes. And before we get into that, I just want to take a step to remind people about this. So we covered this before. You remember that there was the 25-year-old who was arrested in Welland, Ontario, a small town within the Niagara region. I went there for college, and this 25-year-old was arrested for breaking in to a resident's home in Welland, Ontario, and assaulted a 3-year-old girl. A 3-year-old girl. This pedo broke into a house in Welland and assaulted a 3-year-old. And they were sent to court, but they had to have a mistrial because that same 25-year-old immediately, as soon as he got caught, announced that he was transgender. And then the court system had to review the case because of now being confirmed as a transgendered suspect, that now they have to figure out if they can send him to a man's prison or a woman's prison, and they had a mistrial. It's just absolutely chaotic. So here's Michelle Ferreri reminding us that this is so disturbing and needs to be called out. The pedo from Welland needs jail, not bail, in a men's prison. So just because he announced that he was transgender the moment he got caught does not confirm that, you know, he needs to go to a women's facility. That just seems like so convenient that as soon as he got caught, that's when he confirmed that, oh, he's a transgender individual and we have to respect his rights as a transgender. As he was getting caught, as he got into custody, as police detained him. Just a little too convenient on that. So here's Michelle Ferreri speaking about it.
Okay, hey guys, listen. I need to tell you this because I don't think people know. I know they don't know. So I am in Alberta right now. Stay tuned. I have lots of video coming. But I recently did a tour of Drumheller Prison. It's a medium to minimum security men's prison. I have a lot to say about what I saw that is absolutely shocking. But this video is specific to transgender issues in prisons. So for those of you who've been following, I've been very vocal about this. This predator sicko in Welland, Ontario, broke into a home, raped a 3-year-old child, and is asking to be identified as a woman so that he can be transferred to a woman's penitentiary. Here's what you need to know. I went and did a tour of Grand Valley Institution, which is in Kitchener, which is a women's prison. When I went through that, it was in November of last year, 2024, I saw and counted 8 men in that prison who identified as women. So these were transgender. They had full parts, all the full anatomical parts of a man. The federal government pays $75,000 taxpayer dollars to have them transition if they choose to transition, or they can keep those male parts and they get to stay in a female prison. And you can imagine what goes on. Yes, when I asked how many more pregnancies have happened, I got no answers. So fast forward, I go to Drumheller Prison. Again, I will tell you other things that I saw there that are absolutely shocking. So please stay tuned, please subscribe, and please be paying attention, because I believe without a doubt that the information you need to get is not getting to you. Hence, we have this chaos in our world. I go to Drumheller Prison. It's a men's prison. I said, how many transgender women who identify as men are in here? None. 0. None in the entire country. There are no women who identify as men in men's institutions. Why am I telling you this? Because these men, these pedophiles, these sex offenders hide behind a transgender label to attack and prey on women. And that is what they're doing in women's institutions. And that is exactly what this sicko from Welland is doing. He needs to go behind bars. He needs to have serious consequences. And if we can't come together on this issue where we are working collaboratively, politicians across both aisles, where you are absolutely protecting children from known sex offenders there are many. Go Google it. How many are out on bail and now they're hiding behind a transgender label so they don't have to serve the time that they deserve? This is sick and it is wrong and it needs to be called out. It's absolutely absurd and it is the most anti-feminist thing. These men are preying on women. And if your liberal government is so pro-feminist, they need to speak up. And this sicko should never get bail. He should never get out. And we need to come together and protect our children. This is just disgusting.
There you go. That's shocking detail. That you're telling me in all the prisons out there, there is not a single biological female identified as a male, but there's biological males identified as females in women's prisons. I mean, that does kind of sway the controversy into that direction of, are they just using this as a means to disguise themselves from their predatory behavior, from the fact that they are offenders, that they are sexual offenders, that they're pedos and whatnot? I would argue that the best way to excuse yourself at this point is to send yourself to Israel. Just saying. There's how many news reports already confirming that predators, especially child predators, have fled to Israel to avoid accountability, to avoid jurisdictions. We saw that just happen with Vegas. That one guy who was Israeli security agent, I think he was. Something in that notion. So the reason I'm telling you this, and the reason I wanted to show that, is because of this new decision that came from the Supreme Court. And this is where I have no idea where Canada is heading down this, why they're doing this. Because this is dark. This is dark, ladies and gentlemen. The Supreme Court is striking down a 1-year mandatory sentence for child corn possession, prompts calls for liberals to overrule. The case involved a challenge to the sentencing rules brought forward by 2 men in Quebec, or do you say Quebec, who plead guilty to the offenses. So it used to be that under Supreme Court, under federal law, if you were caught with child corn, that you'd be sentenced to a mandatory minimum sentence of at least 1 year. And then if that case escalates further evidence, then they can make a ruling how long the sentence could be. But if you're caught with that, you had at least 1 year. 1 year mandatory of a prison sentence. They're overruling this. Why? Why would they do this? Why? Who is asking for this? Who is asking for this? It's so crazy. It's so backwards. It doesn't even make sense to the normal person. That why would you overrule a mandatory just at least 1 year? It's not like it's a decade or 100 years. A year. A year behind bars for having possession of child corn. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. So I don't know the barbaric nature of the Supreme Court and why they're doing this. But it says Canada's top court narrowly ruled Friday to strike down the 1 year mandatory minimum sentence requirement for the possession and access of child porn after examining the punishment's impact on a hypothetical 18-year-old involved in sexting. The case, which is heard by 9-judge panel, involved a challenge to the sentencing rules brought forward by 2 men in Quebec, or do you say Quebec, who plead guilty to having hundreds of images of children as young as 3 being severely abused. So 2 men from Quebec who has hundreds of images of young children, young as 3 years old, just the same age as we saw with the guy from Welland. Hundreds of images of children as young as 3 years old being severely abused. And the Supreme Court overrules the mandatory sentence, the minimum sentencing. Because of why? Because of why? Oh, because it goes against their provisions? What possible scenario do they have that could allow them, that could give them mentality to overrule in favor of someone like that? What crazy buffoonery comes out of the Supreme Court to do this? At the heart of the debate was a scenario which was not based on the facts of the actual case, but on another possible scenario, which led to a 5-rule ruling from the top courts. The majority ultimately found the 1-year mandatory minimum sentencing for the crimes to be unconstitutional on the basis that the crimes themselves cover a variety of circumstances which could cross the charter-protected right that guards against cruel and unusual punishment. Well, isn't it interesting that they didn't consider that when it came to Tamara Leach and Chris Barber? Isn't it interesting that they, all of a sudden, now they care about the charter? Isn't that amazing, astonishing, that now they care about the charter of rights and freedoms of Canadians? It didn't came about when they were beating up people, cracking the heads of protesters during the Freedom Convoy. It didn't came to be when they were locking people up and sentencing them for peacefully demonstrating in protest. It wasn't when they were freezing bank accounts illegally, unconstitutionally. But now, they care about the Charter of Rights and Freedoms to protect pedos. Are you goddamn kidding me? Are you goddamn kidding me? What mentality does the Supreme Court have to do this? To have this decision that now you care about the Supreme Court when it comes to pedos, people convicted of actual crimes, not participating in a protest, not engaging in a gathering at church. They didn't care about the charter then. They were locking up people that were attending church services during COVID. But now, because 2 men from Quebec had thousands and thousands of images of children being abused, now they care about the charter. Wow. Maybe because some of them are pedos. I'm just saying. How much do we know about our Supreme Court justices? How much do we know about the backing of our governments? We know that Mark Carney and his wife are good friends with Ghislaine Maxwell and the Maxwell family. What's to say that other politicians, other members within the political establishment of Canada are also involved in this network? Just saying. Parliament is free to create mandatory minimum sentences, but these sentences are constitutionally vulnerable when they are associated with crimes and encompass a wide range of conduct, Justice Mary Monroe wrote for the majority. This is the case for the crimes of possession and of accessing child porn. A spokeswoman for Attorney General and Justice Minister Sean Fraser said the federal government was reviewing the decision. At the same time, they're trying to make up a definition for hate crime. Or hate speech. Sorry, hate speech. They want to redefine what hate speech is, which, as I stated and argued, you can't define hate speech because hate is an internal emotion. It's like trying to define happiness for everybody. Everyone has to be happy with pineapple on pizza. Everyone has to be happy with a red balloon and not a blue balloon. Like, it's just so crazy that they're doing this. They have all this time and energy for this maniac, just diabolical situations, but not actually conducting real emphasis on cracking down on crime. They're not doing anything with fentanyl. They're not doing anything with the border crossings. They're not dealing with violent attacks. They're not dealing with gang violence and gun violence. But they're doing stuff like this. Just how insidious this all is. Crimes that exploit or abuse children are among the most serious and reprehensible in our society. Plain and simple, child abusers should face the toughest penalties Canadian laws allows. Lola Dandy Bievra wrote in a statement on Friday, the decision prompted swift backlash from elected conservatives across the country. On X, Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe wrote that his ruling, that the ruling was why he believed elected legislators, not unelected judges, ought to make laws. Alberta Premier Daniel Smith and Ontario Premier Doug Ford called on the Liberals to keep the 1-year mandatory sentence in place by using the notwithstanding clause, which would mean reintroducing the measure in legislation. These people are predators, disgusting scumbags who prey on children, belong behind bars for the rest of their miserable lives, Ford wrote on X. The notwithstanding clause was designed to protect the will of people. The federal government needs to use this to overturn its decision immediately. After initially saying that the federal conservatives would fight for stronger laws using all tools available to us, opposition conservative leader Pierre Poilievre issued a statement late Friday vowing to reintroduce the mandatory sentence should his party form the next government. My future government will reintroduce mandatory minimum sentences for possession of child porn material and ensuring dirtbags like this one before the court are in prison where they belong, Poilievre said, adding on a statement, X Supreme Court ruling was dead wrong. So, again, I don't know the mentality of why the Supreme Court is doing this. Like, what possible motivation could they just allow for this to happen? It's so crazy. It's so crazy. And it goes against the interests of the nation. And the whole point of the jurisdiction, the whole point of a Supreme Court is to uphold the laws that protect the majority of Canadians, that protect the citizens of the country. And while you're using a defense of the charter for pedos, when you use the charter against actual Canadians that were holding accountable to an unscientific, to a very, very distraught, authoritarian crackdown of our citizens and their society, it shows the priority level. It shows how corrupted, evil, maniacal the Supreme Court of Canada is and is becoming. So here's some reactions to this. Here's Danielle Smith, the Premier of Alberta. She said, this decision is outrageous. The possession of child porn is a heinous crime, and even a 1-year minimum sentence is already far too lenient. We call on the federal government to immediately invoke the Constitutional's notwithstanding clause to overturn this ruling and ensure the protection of our children. Here's Tamara Leach. Or is it... Some people say Leach. I say Leach. But some people call her Lich. So I guess it's come see, come saw. Whatever you say. Tamara Lich says, mischief nabs you 3.5 years of lawfare and 18 months of house arrest, though. So just keep that in mind. They used the Charter of Rights and Freedoms to attack Tamara Lich. Or do you say Leach? I'm gonna go with Lich now. They penalized her. They penalized her when she was exercising her right to peacefully demonstrate. So they used it against her, but now they're using the Charter of Rights and Freedoms that apparently was not available for someone like her, but is okay for pedos in Quebec. Make that make sense. Make that make sense. Here's Mark Nixon saying this isn't left or right. It's moral. The court removed a mandatory 1-year sentence for child porn. We should all be angry. Lock them up, throw away the key, protect our kids. I agree with Pierre. So Pierre Poilievre went on to CBC. She went on to Rosemary Barton's show, who's just an absolute disgrace. She's like our own little Rachel Maddow here in this country. And here's what Pierre Poilievre said about this mandatory sentencing and what his government, what the Conservatives' ideal is when it comes to this 1-year sentencing.
Ruling is wrong-headed, and I would oppose the ruling, and I would use the notwithstanding clause to overturn it. and my future government will introduce mandatory prison sentences for possession of child pornography so that dirtbags like this go away for a very long time.
Some of the reasoning from the justices was that, they could see a scenario where two 18-year-olds exchange images and then have a mandatory minimum imposed on them. I don't know what you make of that reasoning.
I think the Supreme Court needs to get away.
So, here Polyev made the statement that says, no, we need the mandatory sentencing to put these dirtbags away. And then Rosemary Barton comes in and says, well, the argument is to be made that maybe two 18-year-olds, this scenario of two 18-year-olds that are sexting, could be also in this ruling. That's why they're ruling out this 1-year sentencing. That's a totally different case. That's comparing apples to oranges. Totally different. Totally different. That's a separate situation. Which, if that was the case, if that was the case presented, then we can have this conversation. But considering this is the fact of people having and accessing and distributing and being predators on the internet across the country, the fact that a 25-year-old broke into a home in Welland, Ontario, and attacked a 3-year-old in her sleep. That's why people are angry about this. That's why this ruling is completely unjustifiable. That no scenario could defend the heinous actions the Supreme Court did against Canadians, against the interest of this nation that wants to stop these pedos from attacking their kids. Like, how crazy that is to bring that. What if it's 18-year-olds? Two 18-year-olds that are sexting. That's completely separate from the conversation, and she knows that. Rosemary Barton is a smart lady. I know she acts dumb on television, but she actually is a smart lady, and she knows better, which is why it's disgusting for her to use this. It's disgusting because they know better. They know better to not use that as a defense to the Supreme Court. So let's listen to Pierre Poilievre's response to it.
From these imaginary scenarios, the scenario before them was two men in possession over a long period of time of hundreds of images and videos that were made by torturing innocent children. And with those facts in front of them, their conclusion actually should have been that the sentence should have been much more than the 1 year and 9 months that the two dirtbag offenders received. They should go away for a very long time. Frankly, if I had my way as a father, I would lock them up and throw away the key.
He even says, as a father, it could have been a lot worse. So, again, I can't explain. There's no justifiable stance in why the Supreme Court did what they did. And this, even the idea that, well, in a scenario that it had two 18-year-olds that are just sexting each other, what if they went to prison? And again, that's a totally different conversation. And that's what Pierre Poilievre said. It's a made-up scenario. We can't have made-up scenarios defending the actions of the Supreme Court to defend pedos and child predators that are going after children in the same group, in the same standing that the Supreme Court went after ordinary Canadians and saying they did not have the rights of charter rights and freedoms, that they weren't vowed to the rights of Canadians. They demonized the Freedom Convoy for peacefully demonstrating among people and bringing the country together, but they're okay to use it to defend child predators to not get jail sentences. Make it make sense. Make it make sense. It's absolutely bonkers. It's insane. It's ludicrous. It's heinous. And, I'm not a father. I'm not a parent myself, but my God, if I had children and I heard this news, I'd be even more angry than I am right now. I'd be more petrified that this is going on, that we're just giving these, almost like pats on the back. We're not even, prosecuting them to any degree. We're almost giving pats on the back for people that are exploiting young kids. It's sickening. It's disgusting. And I don't know why. I really don't know why. So this guy, Greg Galante, made this point. It says, Canada 2025, if you get caught selling raw milk, you get 2 years in prison. Get caught producing and distributing child corn, bail, less than a year in jail. So just keep that in mind. If you got caught selling raw milk, to a customer, get 2 years in prison. And even longer, depending on how much you distribute it. But all the years of producing and distributing child exploitation videos, no jail sentences. Led a peaceful and massive 3-week protest about the government overreach. 49 days in jail, 3-year prosecution, 18 months house arrest, and be threatened with having your livelihood seized and destroyed. Occupy major intersections in every major city. Weekly terrorize Jewish neighborhoods, businesses, and schools for 3 years in the name of Hamas in Gaza. Get a police escort. So, make it make sense. Make it make sense. How crazy all this is. And the fact that now they're protecting child predators. They're giving pats on the back. It's crazy. And methinks it has something to do with the fact that we know that Mark Carney and the Carney family are deeply tied in relation to Maxwell family. We know that Justin Trudeau and Pierre Elliott Trudeau are involved in trafficking under the provision of John Rockefeller and the Rockefeller Foundation. There's a whole analysis on that. You go look at Anike Lucas. She did that breakdown on Patrick Bet David's podcast about that. So we know about that. So there could be a possibility that the Supreme Court is involved or knows explicitly about these child trafficking networks and exploitation, or deeply entrenched with it. We don't know for sure. But like I said, I don't understand. I don't know the mentality of anyone that could support this. Anyone that could support this. Even the royal family. This was a bit of a shock to me. The royal family even said enough was enough. This is just from the BBC just a short while ago. The King Charles, stripped Prince Andrew, of his final military title, ministry says. So he no longer is part of the royal family. Prince Andrew. The King Charles stripped him of his military ranking, of his royal titles, his duties. So now he's an ordinary citizen. That's great. That's amazing. That's amazing. I thought they would have kept this going for years, because when Virginia Giuffre, who was under the maiden name Virginia Roberts, accused Prince Andrew of being part with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell and the sex trafficking network that she was exploited under, they lied, they manipulated, they tried to attack and demonize Virginia Giuffre. Unfortunately, what happened with Virginia Giuffre is devastating. She was in that devastating bus crash that she was told that she only had, days to live, and then surpassed that. And then they claimed that she self-deleted herself, which a lot of people don't believe that story. I don't believe it for a second, because we know that they're trying to cover up this escapade, because we know this network is bigger than one person or one family or even one country. This is a worldwide situation. This is a global criminal cartel that's involved in trafficking minors from all parts of the world. And they use it for exploitation purposes. They use it for laundering. They use it for power abuses. They use it to manipulate people. They use it to settle bets and scores and try to control people. It's all about blackmail. It's all comes down to blackmail. And you wonder why the people that are running the countries and people that are running the world, where they came from, where they originate, why they become powerful figures. It's not because they're smart. I'll tell you that. It's not because they're smart and went to the proper schools. I mean, some of them did, but a lot of them didn't. And a lot of them came from just the ability to manipulate, to blackmail each other, so that they can reign the titles, that they can control the gears, against other people, and that's how you manipulate and control the world. And now even the royal family has had enough with Prince Andrew. That's kind of amazing. So here's the statement coming from Buckingham Palace. And it says, His Majesty today initiate a formal process to remove the style, titles, and honors of Prince Andrew. Prince Andrew will now be known as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. His lease on the Royal Lodge has to date provided him with legal protection to continue in residence. Formal notice has now been served to surrender the lease, and he will move to alternative private accommodation. These censures are deemed necessary, notwithstanding the fact that he continues to deny the allegations against him. So he still has not come clean. They're still not going to prosecute him because he's still a powerful figure, even if he doesn't have the royal tie. He's still a powerful individual in the UK. So they're still not going to hold him to account. There's still no due process in this. But it's nice to know that the royals are at least taking the minimum steps to apprehend someone like Prince Andrew as compared to the Canadian government. Their Majesties wish to make it clear that their thoughts and utmost sympathies have been and will remain with the victims and survivors of any and all foreign abuse. Yeah, I don't believe that for a second. Because we know that the royal family is deeply involved in covering up crimes, covering up disparities. They've abused the peasants. It's bigger than people can imagine. And that's why it's become so controversial. That's why so many people are not, easing up on it. They're not going to let this go. They're not going to let it go silent, because this is not just about Jeffrey Epstein. This is not just about a person here or a person there conducting in child exploitation. This is about a criminal syndicate of trafficking, of exploitation, of corn, of so many just heinous actions that's been going on for decades, that generations of victims have been abused and suffered with, that this is what ultimately upholds these evil, nefarious people that don't give a damn, that got their power not from their smarts, but from their ability to comply with heinous actions, their ability to comply with the blackmail and deceit that holds against them. And that is why you get certain people, even someone like Donald Trump, who campaigned on being MAGA, campaigned on being America first all this time, and within a split second, turns around, gets a blank check from Miriam Adelson, and immediately starts curtailing for Israel. And now everything seems to be in the direction of foreign nations. He even is still pledging for Ukraine. The war that he wants to wrap up, the war he talks about, we don't want any more dead bodies. He's ramping it up more. And he's now going viciously against Venezuela. So all the things that he told you about during the campaign was either manufactured falsehoods to try to drive people into his camp, or there were actually sincerities and he got cornered by these nefarious thugs and being told that, hey, you got to go with our agenda or else we're going to exploit you. We're going to showcase and document your relation with Jeffrey Epstein. We're going to show that side of it. Maybe you were on the Epstein Island. Maybe you were involved in exploiting young minors. We don't know for sure. Whatever the case may be, even showing, possible damage to Trump's life. I mean, the guy had assassinations twice on him. So this is how serious this is. And the fact that the Supreme Court of Canada doesn't take this seriously within our country, it really, really highlights and my growing suspicion of why Canada doesn't even seem concerned about the Epstein files. And you'd think that this would be something that we'd be, hammering on about, because it's directly involving Trump, and anything that involves Trump, oh my God, we got to go full force on this. I mean, Trump could be on that list. Wouldn't we want to be involved in this? But they're keeping their hands clean. They're washing their hands over this, which makes me think that maybe they're covering up our crimes involved in this network. And no doubt that Canada is deeply involved in networking, trafficking, and exploitation of minors. Just saying.